The first snow arrived earlier than expected. At dawn, the towers of Blackthorn Castle disappeared behind pale white fog. Servants moved quietly through the stone corridors. Candles flickered against damp walls. And outside the gates, the world slowly vanished beneath winter. No one thought much of it at first. Winters had always been harsh in the north, but this one felt different. Colder. Still. Almost unnatural. Even the horses inside the stables were restless, breathing heavily into the frozen air, refusing to sleep. By nightfall, snow covered the entire valley, and high above the castle walls, ravens gathered silently along the towers, watching, waiting. Inside the great hall, King Aldrin sat near the fire in silence. The flames reflected against his tired face. He had ruled the kingdom for nearly 30 years, and yet, something about that night unsettled him. Not because of war, not because of rebellion, but because the castle felt wrong, as if the stone itself had grown colder. And somewhere deep within Blackthorn Castle, a bell rang. Once. Slowly. In the middle of the night. Though no one remembered pulling the rope. The bell rang again the following night. One slow sound, echoing across the sleeping castle. Most ignored it. Servants buried themselves beneath blankets. Guards tightened their cloaks against the cold wind. And somewhere below the castle, water dripped endlessly through ancient tunnels. But not everyone slept peacefully. The old gatekeeper swore he saw movement near the lower courtyard. A figure, tall, wrapped in dark cloth, standing motionless in the snow. When he approached with a lantern, there was nothing there, only footprints, leading toward the eastern tower, and stopping suddenly, as though whoever made them had simply disappeared. The next morning, one of the kitchen servants failed to appear for work. A young boy named Tomas. Quiet. Thin. No older than 16. At first no one worried, until they found him hours later inside the chapel, collapsed beside the candles, burning with fever, his skin pale as winter ash, and dark stains spreading slowly across his neck. The castle physician was summoned immediately. After examining the boy, he stood in silence for a long moment, then calmly said, "It is only the cold." But when he left the chapel, his hands were trembling. Tomas was moved to a small room beneath the chapel, far from the kitchens, far from the other servants. The physician ordered isolation immediately, quietly, without informing the king. Only a handful of people even knew the boy was sick. And that was intentional, because fear spread faster than illness inside castle walls, especially during winter. Outside, snow continued falling without pause. The roads disappeared first, then the forests, then the nearby villages beyond the valley. Within days, Blackthorn Castle stood completely alone, cut off from the rest of the kingdom. Inside the servant quarters, rumors began to grow. Some claimed Tomas had returned from the forest days earlier. Others whispered about curses, or poisoned water, or punishment from God. No one agreed on the truth, but everyone noticed the same thing. The castle had become quieter. Even the laughter in the kitchens had faded. Late that evening, The physician returned to check on the boy. Tomas was barely conscious now, sweating violently beneath heavy blankets, murmuring words that made no sense. And beside the bed, dark blood stained the floorboards. The physician stared at it silently, then slowly closed the door behind him, because deep down, he already knew this was not the cold. 3 days later, the gates of Blackthorn Castle were sealed. Officially, it was because of the storm. That was the explanation given to the servants, to the guards, even to some members of the court. But the truth was different. 2 more servants had fallen ill, both from the lower kitchens, both with the same fever, the same dark marks beneath the skin. The physician stopped calling it a sickness. Now, he called it an infection, and that single word changed everything. The king demanded answers immediately, but the physician could not provide them, because he had never seen anything like it before. The illness moved strangely, slowly at first, then all at once. And once the fever began, the body weakened rapidly. The king ordered silence. No panic, no rumors. No one leaves the castle. No one enters. At sunset, guards chained the gates from inside. Heavy iron against frozen wood. The sound echoed across the courtyard like a prison door closing. Most people watched in silence, but some understood immediately what it meant. Winter had trapped them inside, and now, something else had trapped them too. The physician's name was Edric, an old man with tired eyes and permanently shaking hands. For 20 years, he had served the royal family faithfully. He had treated wounds from war, broken bones, famine, childbirth. But this was different, because he was lying now, every single day, to the king, to the servants, to himself. The infection was spreading faster than he admitted. He knew it. By the end of the week, 7 people were sick. 2 had already died. Quietly, during the night, their bodies were removed before dawn, wrapped in cloth, burned beyond the outer walls. No funerals, no prayers. The king believed secrecy would prevent chaos, but secrecy creates something worse: suspicion. And suspicion had already begun spreading through the castle halls. People avoided eye contact now. Servants stopped eating together. Guards whispered during night shifts. Even the priests locked the chapel doors earlier than usual. Then came the moment that changed everything. A young maid approached Edric privately, terrified, crying. She lifted her sleeves slowly and revealed dark marks spreading along her arm. Edric stared at them in silence, because they looked exactly like Tomas's, and for the first time since winter began, the physician felt fear. Real fear. The infected were moved to the eastern tower, far from the royal chambers, far from the kitchens, far from everyone else. Officially, the tower was abandoned. Cold, damp, half forgotten by the castle itself. Its upper halls had not been used in years. Some claimed the place was cursed. Others said prisoners once died there during an old rebellion. No one wanted to go near it now, which made it perfect. Beds were carried upstairs one by one. Candles placed carefully along the stone corridors. Priests hung symbols of protection over the doors. But none of it brought comfort. Because every night, more coughing echoed through the tower halls. And every morning, fewer voices answered. The king avoided speaking about the sickness directly. Instead, he focused on routine. Meals, meetings, military reports. As if normality itself could hold the castle together. But everyone noticed the changes. The empty seats during dinner. The smell of smoke from constant burnings outside the walls. The silence growing heavier each night. Then one evening, a guard stationed near the eastern tower disappeared. His lantern was later found abandoned in the snow, still burning. The ravens returned in larger numbers. Dozens of them now lined the towers of Blackthorn Castle, watching the courtyards below, watching the smoke rise from the burn pits beyond the walls. The servants hated them. Some believed ravens carried death. Others believed they predicted it. Either way, their presence unsettled everyone, especially after the birds began gathering near the eastern tower. Every morning, more appeared, as if drawn there by something invisible. Meanwhile, inside the castle, the atmosphere continued changing. People moved faster now, spoke quieter, averted their eyes. No one trusted coughs anymore, or fevers, or silence. The king's advisors started arguing constantly. Some demanded stricter isolation. Others insisted the sickness was exaggerated. One noble even accused the physician of creating panic intentionally. But behind closed doors, that same noble secretly refused to touch anyone. Fear had infected the castle long before the disease reached everyone else. Then came another death. Not a servant this time. A guard. Young. Healthy. Strong. He collapsed during patrol near the chapel stairs. And by sunrise, half the castle knew. Because once soldiers begin dying, people stop believing they are safe. The chapel slowly emptied. At first, people still gathered there to pray, to ask for protection, for healing, for answers. But as the infection spread, faith became quieter, then distant. Eventually, fear replaced it completely. The priests noticed it first. Fewer candles lit each evening. Fewer voices joining prayers. Even confession rooms stood abandoned. No one wanted to sit too close to anyone anymore, especially in enclosed spaces. The king himself stopped attending services after rumors emerged that one priest had fallen ill, though officially, that rumor was denied. Late one night, Father Lucian entered the chapel alone. Snow tapped softly against stained glass windows. Candles flickered weakly in the darkness. And near the altar, he found fresh blood. Small drops, leading toward the back corridor. The priest followed them carefully, step by step, until they disappeared near the crypt entrance beneath the chapel floor. He stood there for a long moment, listening, and somewhere below him, something moved in the darkness. A week into the storm, someone arrived at the gates. A messenger, or what remained of one. The guards spotted the horse first, slowly approaching through heavy snowfall, barely alive. The rider collapsed before reaching the bridge, frozen almost completely. his fingers blackened by frost, ice covering his beard and armor. The gates opened only briefly to bring him inside. But even then, the guards hesitated, as if the cold itself had become dangerous. The messenger survived long enough to speak a few words. Villages beyond the valley were abandoned, people fleeing south. The sickness had already spread beyond Blackthorn, and worse still, roads throughout the kingdom were blocked by winter storms. No help was coming, no medicine, no soldiers, nothing. The king listened silently beside the fire. For the first time since winter began, he looked truly afraid. Because isolation changes everything. A kingdom can survive war. It can survive famine. But isolation slowly breaks people apart from the inside. And Blackthorn Castle was now completely alone, buried beneath snow, buried beneath silence, and buried beneath fear. The first fire began shortly after midnight. Small at first, hidden within servant quarters near the lower kitchens. Most believed it was an accident. A candle knocked over. Nothing unusual, but the flames spread too quickly. Old wood, dry cloth, winter winds moving through narrow corridors. Within minutes, smoke filled half the southern wing. Bells rang violently across the castle. Guards rushed through the halls carrying buckets of water. Servants screamed in confusion. And for the first time since the sickness began, fear became visible. Not whispered, not hidden. Visible. During the chaos, something else happened. 3 infected patients disappeared from the eastern tower. No one understood how or why. The doors had remained locked. The guards swore no one entered. Yet the beds were empty, blankets stained dark with blood. The physician nearly collapsed when he saw it, because now the infection was no longer contained, if it ever had been. Meanwhile, outside the burning wing, snow continued falling softly over Blackthorn Castle, silent, endless, as if winter itself was slowly burying the kingdom alive. The king ordered a formal dinner 3 nights after the fire, not because he wished to celebrate, but because he needed control. That was how King Aldrin ruled, not through warmth, not through trust, through order. And order was beginning to disappear. The great hall had once felt alive during winter feasts. Music, laughter, wine spilling across long wooden tables. Now, the room felt hollow. Candles burned lower than usual. Servants avoided speaking. Even the sound of cutlery seemed strangely loud. Several seats remained empty. Everyone noticed. No one mentioned them. The nobles arrived dressed in heavy dark fabrics, still carrying snow across their boots. And though they smiled politely, their eyes betrayed them. Fear changes people quietly. It makes conversations shorter, movements sharper, silence is heavier. Halfway through the meal, Lord Harren began coughing. Only once. A dry cough. But the entire hall froze. No one looked directly at him. And yet everyone did. Harren quickly apologized, claiming smoke from the fire had irritated his throat. The king nodded slowly, but no one relaxed afterward. From that moment on, every breath inside the hall felt dangerous. When dinner finally ended, Many nobles returned to their chambers immediately. Some ordered servants dismissed entirely. Others locked their own doors from inside. And later that night, Lord Harren developed a fever. By morning, an entire corridor of the castle had been sealed. Heavy wooden barriers blocked both entrances. Guards stood silently nearby with covered faces and lowered eyes. No explanation was given officially, but explanations were no longer necessary. People understood. Lord Harren's condition had worsened rapidly during the night. The physician refused to move him through the castle, so instead, they imprisoned the sickness inside the corridor itself. Servants who had worked nearby were ordered into isolation. Food was left outside doors. No one entered unless absolutely necessary. And even then, they entered reluctantly. The atmosphere inside Blackthorn changed immediately. People stopped wandering. The castle had once felt enormous. Now it felt narrow, claustrophobic, like every hallway led toward danger. That afternoon, snowstorms darkened the skies so heavily that even midday resembled dusk. Torches burned continuously throughout the corridors, and in the silence between distant footsteps, people began imagining things. Whispers behind walls, movement in empty halls, coughing where no one stood. By evening, another section of the castle was sealed. Then another. And slowly, Blackthorn Castle began dividing itself into pieces. The burn pits outside the walls never stopped smoking now. Day or night, dark columns rose endlessly into the winter sky. At first, only servants had been taken there. Then guards. Then members of minor noble houses. The bodies were wrapped tightly in cloth before sunrise. No names spoken. No ceremonies allowed. The king believed funerals would spread panic, but removing them silently spread something worse. Dread. Because when people vanish without ritual, it feels less like death, and more like erasure. Workers assigned to the burn pits began refusing the task. One man fled during the night. Another claimed he heard voices coming from beneath the wrapped bodies. The physician dismissed such stories immediately, but privately. Even he had stopped sleeping well. The smell of burning flesh drifted through the castle whenever the wind shifted. No amount of incense could hide it anymore. People noticed, especially during meals. Late one evening, a young servant asked quietly whether the sickness could travel through smoke. No one answered her, because no one truly knew, and uncertainty is often more terrifying than truth. Near midnight, a fresh cart arrived at the pits, this time carrying 4 bodies instead of 1. Among them, Lord Harren. People started checking their skin constantly. Every itch became suspicious. Every bruise felt dangerous. Every cough caused silence. The infection had changed the rhythm of life inside Blackthorn Castle. No one embraced anymore. No one shared cups. Servants wore cloth across their mouths. Even nobles avoided touching door handles directly. Then the red marks appeared. Not on the sick, on the healthy. Small dark stains beneath the skin, usually near the neck, or wrists, or ribs. The physician tried calming everyone. He claimed many were imagining symptoms from fear alone, and perhaps some were, but not all. One guard cut his own arm open in panic after discovering dark discoloration beneath the skin. Another locked himself inside his room for 2 days. A cook poisoned herself with herbs, believing they would stop the fever before it began. Fear was no longer following the sickness. Fear had become its own disease. That night, the king ordered mirrors removed from several sections of the castle, because people had begun staring at themselves obsessively, searching for signs, searching for death. And in hidden corners of Blackthorn, some had already found it. The snow did not stop, not once. For nearly 2 weeks, winter buried the castle deeper each day. The outer walls disappeared beneath white drifts. Watchtowers froze. Horses died inside the stables despite constant fires. And beyond the gates, the world no longer existed. Only snow. Only silence. The isolation began affecting everyone differently. Some became angry, others quiet, others deeply religious. Servants carried candles through corridors as though darkness itself had become dangerous. Meanwhile, the king spent longer hours staring from the northern tower, watching endless snowfall consume the valley below. He no longer spoke much during council meetings. The nobles noticed. So did the guards. Because rulers are not allowed to appear uncertain during disasters. And Aldrin was beginning to look uncertain. Late one night, the queen attempted to comfort him beside the fire. But even she hesitated before touching his hand. The king noticed immediately. Neither mentioned it. Outside, wind screamed against the stone towers of Blackthorn Castle, and somewhere far below, another bell rang in the darkness. Queen Illyra had hidden the cough for 3 days. Only her personal servant knew, and even then, barely. At first it was small, dry, occasional, easy to dismiss. But by the 4th night, blood appeared on her handkerchief. She burned the cloth immediately, then ordered silence. Because if the court discovered the queen was sick, panic inside the castle would explode. Illyra understood politics better than most men in the kingdom. Fear spreads downward from power. If the royal family looked vulnerable, everything else would collapse after it. So she continued appearing publicly, still attending meals, still speaking calmly, still pretending. But illness changes the body in ways impossible to fully hide. Her face had grown pale. Dark shadows formed beneath her eyes. And during prayer one morning, she nearly collapsed walking toward the altar. The physician was summoned secretly after midnight. When he examined her, he said nothing for a long time. That silence alone told her the truth. The queen sat quietly beside the fire afterward, listening to distant wind, then finally asked one question. How long? The physician lowered his eyes. Because he did not know, and because lately, almost no one inside Blackthorn Castle survived for long. The chapel filled again after news of the queen began spreading quietly through the servants. Not officially, never officially, but castles breathe through rumor, and rumors always reach the lower halls first. By evening, dozens gathered beneath candlelight. Servants, guards, widows, old men whispering prayers into shaking hands. Father Lucian stood before them exhausted. He had buried more people in 2 weeks than during the previous 5 years. And still, they kept coming. The priest spoke softly about endurance, about winter passing eventually, about light surviving darkness. But even as he spoke, fear remained visible in every face before him. Halfway through the prayer, someone began coughing violently near the back rows. People immediately stepped away. One woman screamed. Another rushed toward the doors. Panic spread instantly. Not loud, not chaotic. Worse, controlled panic. The kind people try desperately to hide. Within seconds, the chapel emptied almost completely. Candles still burning, benches abandoned. Only Father Lucian remained near the altar, watching smoke drift slowly toward the ceiling. And for the first time in his life, even he struggled to pray. A servant girl disappeared during the night. No one saw her leave. No one heard screams. She was simply gone. By morning, guards searched the eastern tower carefully. Most hated entering the place now. The corridors smelled of sickness and damp stone. Candles burned low, and distant coughing echoed constantly through the walls. Then one guard discovered an open window near the upper floor. Snow had gathered along the ledge, and below, far beneath the tower, lay a body, broken against frozen stone. The servant girl. Some claimed she had jumped willingly. Others believed fever had driven her mad. But the strangest detail unsettled everyone. The window had been locked from inside. No one could explain it. The guards sealed the room immediately. Still, stories spread through Blackthorn within hours. People whispered about voices in the tower, or shadows standing beside beds at night, or sick patients wandering corridors after death. None of it could be proven, but winter isolation twists the mind slowly, especially when death surrounds you every day. And by now, death surrounded everyone inside Blackthorn Castle. King Aldrin finally acted. Harshly, brutally, without debate. At dawn, new laws were announced across the castle. No gatherings after sunset. No movement between wings without permission. Any servant showing symptoms would be isolated immediately. And most importantly, no one speaks of the sickness publicly. Punishment for spreading panic would be severe. The king believed discipline could still save Blackthorn, but desperation often disguises itself as authority. And people sense desperation now, especially among the guards. Some had begun drinking heavily during night patrols. Others refused assignments near infected areas entirely. Meanwhile, the physician privately warned the king of something even worse. Food supplies were becoming dangerous, not because of shortages yet, because too many workers were sick to maintain the kitchens safely. If the infection reached storage areas, the entire castle could collapse within weeks. The king listened silently beside the fire, then gave another order. The gates remain closed, no matter what happens. Even if people beg to leave, even if they try to flee, Blackthorn Castle would remain sealed. And in that moment, the castle truly became a prison. The storm reached its worst point near the end of winter's third week. Snow struck the castle walls like waves against stone. Wind howled endlessly through narrow towers. And darkness arrived early. Too early. Even before sunset. The sky had turned black. That night felt wrong from the beginning. Torches extinguished constantly without reason. Dogs barked wildly inside the lower courtyards, and nearly everyone struggled to sleep. The Queen's fever worsened rapidly after midnight. Meanwhile, 3 more nobles developed symptoms, and somewhere below the castle, a storage cellar collapsed beneath heavy ice. Servants spent hours digging through rubble in freezing darkness. Then, shortly before dawn, the bells began ringing again, louder than before. Not once, not twice, endlessly. The sound echoed through every corridor of Blackthorn Castle. Guards rushed toward the chapel tower immediately. But when they arrived, they found no one there. Only the bell swinging slowly above them, moving by itself. And below, fresh blood across the frozen floor. The guards stared silently into the darkness beneath the tower stairs. Because something inside Blackthorn Castle had changed. The sickness was no longer just outside people. It had entered the atmosphere itself. The walls, the silence, the minds of everyone trapped inside. And winter was far from over. Breakfast inside Blackthorn Castle had once been noisy. Now, only spoons could be heard. Servants avoided standing too close together. No one shared bread anymore. No one poured wine for another person. Every movement carried hesitation. The Queen's absence from the royal table did not go unnoticed. The king claimed she was resting. But people already knew. Rumors moved faster than truth inside closed walls. And fear gave those rumors life. That morning, a servant collapsed while carrying hot broth through the great hall. No one rushed to help him immediately. Not even the guards. For several long seconds, everyone simply stared, watching him struggle on the stone floor. Because compassion had begun fighting against survival, and survival was winning. The castle well froze completely for the first time in decades. Workers spent hours breaking thick layers of ice beneath torchlight. But the deeper they dug, the stranger the water smelled. Dark, metallic. Ron, the physician, ordered no one to drink from it until further inspection. That single warning terrified the castle more than any speech. Because people can survive fear, they can survive cold. But once water becomes uncertain, panic truly begins. Some servants secretly melted snow instead. Others stole wine from storage rooms. Fights broke out quietly near the kitchens. And during the night, someone poisoned a barrel out of desperation. No one discovered who. By dawn, 3 more people were dead. The king continued writing letters to nearby lords. Requests for aid, for medicine, for soldiers. But no messenger could leave Blackthorn alive. Still, he kept writing, as if the act itself preserved hope. Late one night, a servant discovered the king burning several of those letters privately inside his chambers. Unread, unsent. The servant never spoke of it. But the image spread through whispers soon after. Because if the king himself had stopped believing rescue would come, what remained for everyone else? Outside, snow buried the outer roads completely. And somewhere beyond the valley, wolves began gathering in the forests again. The sick started describing the same dreams. A frozen corridor, endless spells, a dark figure standing at the end of the hall, watching silently. At first, the physician dismissed the stories. Fever twists the mind. Everyone knows that. But eventually, too many people described the exact same thing. Even people isolated far apart. Even guards. Even nobles. One woman claimed the figure spoke to her. Another insisted it touched her face. Father Lucian began sleeping with candles lit beside his bed after hearing the stories. Not because he believed them, but because fear had entered even the priest now. And once fear reaches the faithful, it spreads everywhere else quickly. 2 guards vanished during night patrol. Their spears were later found abandoned near the northern wall. No blood. No footprints. Nothing. The storm had erased everything. The king ordered searches immediately. But searching beyond the walls during blizzard conditions was nearly impossible. Hours later, one of the missing guards returned alone, barefoot, half frozen, barely able to speak. When questioned, he only repeated one sentence. Something was moving outside the snow. Then he began screaming uncontrollably, and by morning, the fever had already reached him. The queen no longer left her chambers. Heavy curtains blocked sunlight completely. Candles burned day and night beside her bed. The physician visited constantly now, always exhausted, always carrying the smell of herbs and smoke. The king remained beside Illyra for hours in silence, sometimes holding her hand, sometimes simply watching the fire. Neither spoke much anymore. Words become smaller around death. One evening, the queen asked for music. A servant played softly beside the fireplace while snow struck the windows outside. For a brief moment, the room almost felt peaceful again. Then the queen began coughing blood onto the blankets, and the illusion vanished. The lower prison cells beneath Blackthorn had been abandoned for years. Now they reopened. Not for criminals, for the infected. The eastern tower had become too full, too dangerous, too loud. Coughing echoed constantly there now. Some prisoners begged guards not to leave them underground. Others refused food entirely. One nobleman attempted bribing his way out of isolation. By the following day, he was dead. The castle no longer cared about status. The sickness treated kings and servants alike, and that realization frightened the nobles more than anything else. A child claimed ravens were entering through the old library windows at night. No one believed him at first, until feathers began appearing across the floor. Then scratches. Then droppings. The librarian sealed the room immediately, but servants continued whispering strange stories afterward. Books falling from shelves alone. Wings heard inside empty corridors. Black shapes moving beyond candlelight. The isolation was changing people. Slowly. Deeply. And Blackthorn Castle itself seemed to absorb that fear. Most of the horses were dead by now. The remaining few stood weakly inside freezing stables, their breath visible in thick white clouds. The stable master admitted privately that food reserves for animals had nearly vanished. Soon, choices would have to be made. Feed the horses, or feed the people. The king delayed the decision for 2 days, then ordered the animals slaughtered. Some servants cried while it happened. Others watched silently, because survival had stripped emotion from many of them already. The second fire was no accident. This time, someone deliberately started it inside storage chambers near the western wing. The flames spread rapidly before guards contained them. Several food supplies were lost completely. The king ordered immediate investigations. But privately, many suspected the truth already. Someone inside Blackthorn had begun breaking. And desperation inside closed walls always becomes dangerous eventually. By the middle of winter, there was only one truly warm room left inside Blackthorn Castle. The old council chamber. Not because it was important anymore, but because it still had enough wood, enough servants, enough fire. People started finding excuses to stay there longer than necessary. Guards volunteered for duty nearby. Servants cleaned the same tables repeatedly. Even nobles remained after meetings ended, simply to feel warmth for a few extra minutes. No one admitted it openly, but everyone feared returning to their own chambers. Because the further you moved from the fires, the more the castle felt dead. The corridors had grown colder each week. Stone walls breathed freezing air. Torches struggled to stay alive. And at night, Blackthorn sounded different now. Not louder, quieter, too quiet, as if the castle itself had started holding its breath. One evening, a servant fell asleep beside the council fire after working for nearly 20 hours. No one woke him immediately. People simply watched, envious, because exhaustion had become the only escape left. Then suddenly, the chamber doors opened. A violent gust of frozen wind crossed the room. Every candle flickered at once. And standing there was the king. But something about him had changed. His face looked thinner, paler, older. Not like a ruler anymore. Like a man being slowly consumed by the same winter devouring everyone else. He looked around the room silently. At the nobles, the guards, the servants hiding near the warmth. And for the first time since winter began, people realized something terrifying. The king no longer looked certain. And when certainty disappears from a castle, fear replaces it very quickly. The eastern staircase froze overnight. Not the steps themselves. The walls. Ice spread across the stone like veins. Thin at first, then thicker each morning. Servants carrying firewood slept constantly there now. 2 broke bones. 1 never stood again. The physician warned everyone to avoid the staircase after dark. But the problem wasn't only the ice. It was the sound. Because every night, people heard footsteps there. Slow footsteps. Heavy. Moving upward. Always upward. But whenever guards investigated, the staircase stood empty. One young servant claimed he saw someone standing halfway up the stairs during the night. Tall. Motionless. Watching him. He described a dark cloak covered in snow. The guards mocked him at first, until another servant described the exact same figure 2 days later. Then a cook. Then one of the castle scribes. The stories spread quickly after that. No one wanted Eastern Patrol anymore. And eventually, guards started traveling in pairs through that part of Blackthorn. Not because they believed the rumors. Because winter inside isolated places changes the mind. That's what they told themselves. But deep down, Every single one of them walked faster there. The kitchens never truly slept before winter. There was always movement. Fire. Noise. Arguments between cooks. The sound of knives against wood. Now, half the ovens remained cold. Entire tables stood empty. Too many workers were gone. Dead. Sick. Or simply too weak to continue. Meals had become painfully small. Thin broth. Hard bread. Occasionally dried meat. Nothing more. Even the nobles had stopped complaining. Because everyone knew the truth now. The food would not last until spring. And worse. Everyone knew it at the same time. That changes people. Hunger always does. A young servant was caught stealing potatoes late one night. Just 3 potatoes. That was all. He begged the guards not to tell the king. Said his younger sister hadn't eaten in 2 days. But examples had become necessary inside Blackthorn. The punishment came publicly the next morning. Not execution. Something quieter. The servant was expelled beyond the walls. Into the storm. No weapon. No horse. No supplies. The gates closed behind him before sunrise. And no one ever saw him again. After that, the kitchens became silent. Not peaceful. Fearful. Because everyone understood the message clearly. Inside Blackthorn now, survival mattered more than mercy. It began near the burn pits. At first, people thought it was ash, but the snow surrounding the fires had turned dark red. Day after day, more bodies burned there. Servants, soldiers, children, even nobles now. The smoke rising from the pits no longer disappeared quickly into the sky. It hung above the castle constantly. Heavy. Dark. Like Blackthorn itself was rotting from the inside. Workers assigned to the burn pits stopped speaking during their shifts. Most avoided looking directly at the bodies anymore. Because after enough death, the mind protects itself by becoming numb. One old guard claimed he recognized someone burning there. A friend from years ago. But when he looked closer, he realized the face was too damaged to know for certain. That frightened him more than the death itself. Not recognizing the dead. Losing even memory. And meanwhile, the snow kept falling. Covering everything. The walls. The roads. The graves beneath the frozen ground. As if winter itself wanted to erase Blackthorn completely. For weeks, the great bell had remained silent after cracking during the storm. But people still heard it. Especially at night. A distant ringing. Low. Broken. Almost buried beneath the wind. At first, everyone assumed it was imagination, until multiple guards reported hearing it at the same exact time. One patrol even abandoned their route entirely after the sound echoed through the western courtyard. When questioned, they swore the bell had rung directly above them. But when they reached the tower, nothing moved. The bell remained frozen in silence. Father Lucian attempted calming the rumors during evening prayer. He explained how fear twists the senses, how exhaustion creates illusions, how isolation affects the mind. And while he spoke, the sound returned again. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Even the priest stopped talking. No one moved for several seconds. Then slowly, people began leaving the chapel without a word. Because hearing something impossible once is frightening, hearing it together is worse. A woman was seen crossing the northern courtyard during the storm, barefoot, wearing only a thin white gown. One guard spotted her first near midnight. Another confirmed it minutes later. By the time they reached the courtyard, she was gone. No tracks remained in the snow. The strange part wasn't the sighting itself. It was the description, because both guards described the exact same face. Queen Illyra, dead for weeks now. The story spread through Blackthorn before dawn. Some dismissed it immediately. Others whispered prayers. But after that night, people stopped crossing the northern courtyard alone, especially after dark, because fear inside castles is contagious. And once a story becomes stronger than logic, it starts shaping reality itself. The king could no longer hide the sickness. His coughing had worsened. His hands trembled during council meetings. Sometimes, he lost focus mid-sentence entirely. Still, he refused to remain in bed, refused weakness, refused the truth. But the castle noticed. Kings are expected to appear immortal during crisis. A ruler cannot look fragile while the world collapses around him. And Aldrin now looked exhausted beyond repair. One evening, during dinner, the king suddenly coughed blood across the tablecloth. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence afterward felt enormous. Then quietly, the king stood, wiped his mouth, and walked away without explanation. That moment changed Blackthorn completely, because now everyone knew. If the king dies, the castle dies with him. People had started locking themselves inside their rooms at night. Not because of thieves, because of fear. Doors once left open now remained barricaded. Furniture pushed against entrances. Candles burning until morning. One noblewoman claimed someone tried opening her chamber repeatedly during the night. Slowly, carefully, testing the handle. But no guard had been assigned there. Others reported whispering beyond doors. Footsteps stopping outside rooms. Breathing heard through keyholes. No one knew what was real anymore. And that uncertainty was becoming more dangerous than the sickness itself. Because when people stop trusting the world around them, they begin losing control of their own minds. Part of the southern tower collapsed during the blizzard. The sound shook the entire castle awake. Stone crashed into the courtyard below. Snow exploded upward like smoke. 3 servants died instantly beneath the rubble. A 4th survived for several hours trapped beneath broken beams. People heard him screaming through the night. But the storm made rescue impossible. Eventually, his voice disappeared too. The collapse terrified Blackthorn more than the plague. Because sickness kills slowly. But seeing the castle itself break apart made everyone realize something worse. Blackthorn might not survive the winter physically. Not just politically. Not spiritually. Literally. The castle was dying. Stone by stone. Edric had stopped sleeping entirely. Dark circles hollowed beneath his eyes. His hands shook constantly now. He moved through Blackthorn like a ghost carrying medicine instead of hope. Because hope had disappeared from his work long ago, now he only delayed endings. And he knew it. One late evening, a servant found him inside the infirmary staring silently at dozens of handwritten notes spread across a table. Symptoms, deaths, failed treatments, names crossed out one after another. An entire winter documented in ink. The servant asked quietly, "Can any of them still recover?" Edric remained silent for a very long time, then finally answered, "Not before the castle destroys itself first." Outside, the storm intensified again, and somewhere deep within Blackthorn, another bell rang softly through the darkness. The great hall finally lost its fires. Not completely, but enough. Only 2 fireplaces still burned by the beginning of the 4th winter month. The room that once held feasts, music, and hundreds of voices now sat beneath darkness and cold stone. Long wooden tables remained untouched. Goblets gathered dust. Candles burned shorter each night because wax itself had become precious. People no longer gathered there willingly. The hall felt wrong now. Too large, too empty, too quiet. And silence inside enormous places always unsettles the human mind. One evening, a servant carrying wood entered the hall alone shortly after sunset. Minutes later, guards heard screaming. They found the servant collapsed near the throne platform, shaking violently. When questioned, he swore someone had been sitting on the throne, watching him. A tall figure dressed entirely in black. But by the time guards arrived, the throne stood empty beneath dying firelight. Still, after that night, almost no one entered the great hall alone anymore, especially after dark, because even if the servant imagined it, the fear he carried afterward looked painfully real. The kitchens could no longer bake properly. The flour had absorbed moisture from weeks of cold air. Water barrels froze repeatedly during the night, and many cooks were either sick or dead now. The bread that finally emerged from the ovens felt hard as stone. People soaked pieces in broth simply to chew it. Even the king ate silently without complaint. That frightened the servants more than anger would have, because rulers stop complaining once they begin accepting collapse. Late one night, 2 guards discovered an old woman hiding stolen bread beneath her bed. Not fresh bread, molded scraps thrown away earlier that day. When questioned, she admitted she feared the food would vanish entirely soon. No punishment came. The guards simply left quietly, because deep down, they feared the exact same thing. A hidden room was discovered beneath the chapel crypts. One of the old stone walls collapsed after moisture weakened it during the storm. Behind it, workers found a narrow staircase descending deeper underground. Father Lucian insisted he had never seen it before. Torches were brought immediately. The air below smelled ancient, dry, still, unlike the freezing castle above. At the bottom of the stairs, they discovered a circular chamber filled with candles. Hundreds of them. Some melted completely, others still standing untouched. And strangely, several were burning, freshly lit, even though no one had entered the room for decades. At least, that was what everyone believed. The discovery spread rapidly through Blackthorn. People began whispering that someone had been living beneath the castle secretly. Others believed the room was cursed. Father Lucian ordered the chamber sealed again before midnight. But rumors cannot be sealed once released. And afterward, Many people claimed they could smell candle smoke drifting through the chapel during the night, even when no candles burned above. A child developed the sickness for the first time. Until then, most victims had been adults weakened by hunger and cold. But children surviving while parents died had given people a small amount of hope. Now that hope disappeared too. The boy was only 7 years old, son of one of the kitchen workers. His fever rose violently before dawn. By afternoon, he no longer recognized his own mother. The infirmary had become too crowded already, so the physician ordered the child isolated inside a small storage room near the eastern corridor. His mother begged to stay beside him. At first, the guards refused. Then one quietly allowed it anyway. 3 days later, both were dead. After that, people stopped speaking about hope entirely. The storm returned stronger than ever. Snow struck the castle walls continuously for nearly 2 days without pause. Visibility disappeared completely beyond the towers. Even the outer courtyard vanished beneath white darkness. The world outside Blackthorn no longer felt real. Only winter existed now. Only stone. Only fear. The storm sounds changed during the night. Sometimes the wind resembled distant screaming. Other times, it sounded almost like voices whispering beneath the walls. No one slept well anymore. One exhausted guard swore he saw figures moving through the snow outside the gates. Dozens of them, standing motionless, watching the castle. But when others looked, nothing remained there. Just endless white emptiness. Still, the image haunted him afterward. Because isolation slowly teaches the mind to fear even silence itself. Father Lucian gathered the remaining survivors inside the chapel near midnight. Not for ceremony, for comfort, or at least an attempt at it. Only a handful arrived. Several guards, a few servants, 2 nobles wrapped in heavy furs. Everyone looked exhausted beyond words. The priest spoke softly beside candlelight, about endurance, about suffering, about spring eventually returning. But even he no longer sounded convinced. His voice carried fatigue now, not spiritual fatigue, human fatigue. Because priests are still human beneath faith. Halfway through the prayer, someone began coughing violently near the entrance. People moved away immediately. Fear had become instinct. No one even apologized for it anymore. The sick guard collapsed moments later across the chapel floor. No one touched him. Not at first. The silence that followed felt unbearable. Then slowly, Father Lucian stepped forward alone, and beside flickering candlelight. He knelt beside the dying man while everyone else watched from a distance. The king summoned Father Lucian privately before dawn. Only the priest entered the royal chambers. The guards remained outside. The room smelled strongly of herbs and sickness now. King Aldrin sat beside the fire wrapped beneath heavy blankets despite the heat. His breathing sounded uneven, painful, for several long moments. He simply stared into the flames silently. Then finally he spoke. Not as a king, as a frightened man. He admitted he no longer believed Blackthorn would survive the winter. The words shocked even Lucian, because rulers rarely speak their deepest fears aloud, especially dying rulers. The king confessed something else too. Weeks earlier, Before the castle was sealed completely, he had received warnings from nearby villages, reports of the sickness spreading. He ignored them, believed the walls of Blackthorn would protect them. Now everyone inside those walls was trapped together instead. The priest listened quietly, because no prayer could change the truth anymore. Outside, snow continued falling endlessly against the castle windows. Entire rows of beds inside the infirmary stood empty now. Not because people recovered, because they died faster than new patients could arrive. The silence there had become terrifying. Only occasional coughing disturbed the stillness. Sheets remained stained dark beneath candlelight. Meds and supplies had nearly vanished entirely, and Edric no longer bothered pretending otherwise. One young servant asked him whether the sickness would survive into spring. The physician looked at her carefully before answering. If spring still comes. That sentence spread through Blackthorn by evening. And after that, even the strongest people inside the castle began breaking mentally. Because cold can be survived. Hunger can be survived. But once people lose belief in the future, something inside them collapses permanently. A guard disappeared during gate duty shortly before sunrise. Only his spear remained beside the entrance. Search parties found tracks leading briefly into the snow, before vanishing completely. Hours later, another guard reported seeing movement outside the main gate during the storm. Not wolves. Not travelers. A single dark figure standing motionless beyond the snow, watching the castle. The gates remained closed. No one approached. And eventually, the figure disappeared back into the blizzard. That night, almost every guard requested reassignment away from the outer walls. None received it. The final oil reserves ran out during the night. One by one, entire corridors disappeared into darkness permanently. Only the most important rooms still carried light now. The throne room, the infirmary, parts of the chapel. Everything else remained swallowed by shadow. Blackthorn Castle felt enormous again suddenly. Not because it had grown, because darkness makes familiar places feel endless. Servants carried candles constantly now, tiny moving flames against oceans of black stone. And beyond those small circles of light, the castle seemed alive somehow, watching, waiting, listening. Late that night, a young guard crossed one of the darkened corridors alone, carrying a lantern. Halfway through, he heard footsteps behind him. Slow, measured. He turned immediately. No one stood there, but the footsteps continued anyway. Closer this time. The guard dropped the lantern and ran. And afterward, he refused to speak about what he heard ever again. Meanwhile, deep inside Blackthorn Castle, winter continued tightening its grip around everyone still alive. People had started hiding food beneath the floorboards, inside walls, under mattresses, anywhere. Trust inside Blackthorn had nearly disappeared completely now. Meals were no longer shared openly. Even families ate separately whenever possible, because hunger changes people slowly at first, and then all at once. One servant accused another of stealing dried meat from the kitchens. The argument escalated quickly. By the time guards arrived, one of them lay bleeding across the floor with a knife buried in his throat. No one even remembered what amount of food they had been fighting over. That was the frightening part. It no longer mattered. The castle wasn't starving yet, but everyone feared starvation constantly, and fear alone was already destroying them. That night, the king ordered stricter rationing, smaller portions, fewer meals. The announcement spread silently through Blackthorn. No protests followed, only quiet despair, because deep down, everyone understood what rationing truly meant. The winter was winning. The queen's body still remained inside the royal crypt. The ground outside was too frozen for burial. At first, guards rotated duty there regularly, but eventually, many refused. Some claimed they heard movement beneath the crypt after midnight. Others described whispering, soft breathing. One terrified servant swore she heard Queen Illyra coughing from behind the stone doors. Father Lucian dismissed the stories immediately, but even he avoided the crypt alone afterward. One evening, a guard station nearby abandoned his post entirely. When questioned later, he described hearing fingernails scratching slowly against stone beneath the floor. The man never returned to duty again, and after that, the royal crypts remained mostly empty, untouched, silent, except for whatever sounds people believed they heard there during the night. Sleep had become dangerous, not physically, mentally. People inside Blackthorn no longer rested properly. The cold interrupted them. The coughing interrupted them. The fear interrupted them. And eventually, exhaustion began changing behavior. Servants forgot simple tasks. Guards argued over things that made no sense. One nobleman spent hours speaking to empty chairs during dinner. Another locked himself inside a storage room because he believed invisible figures walked the corridors at night. Even the physician started losing concentration. Several times, Edric caught himself staring blankly at walls without realizing how much time had passed. The human mind requires safety to remain stable, and Blackthorn Castle no longer offered safety to anyone. Only survival, and survival alone slowly breaks people apart. The castle itself had begun freezing from the inside. Thin layers of frost spread across interior walls now. Ice formed beneath doors. Water buckets solidified before morning. Even fireplaces struggled against the cold. Servants woke to frozen blankets, frozen cups, frozen breath hanging permanently in dark rooms. The northern wing became nearly uninhabitable. Several people sleeping there developed frostbite during the night. One old servant never woke again. Not from sickness, from cold. That frightened people differently, because plague feels distant at first, but freezing to death inside your own bed felt immediate, personal. And meanwhile, the storm outside continued endlessly, as though winter intended to bury Blackthorn completely beneath snow and silence forever. Workers repairing collapsed stone near the lower corridors reported hearing voices beneath the floors. Not echoes, conversations, murmuring too distorted to understand clearly. At first, the guards assumed people were hiding below. Perhaps thieves, perhaps desperate servants. So they searched the lower tunnels carefully with torches. They found nothing. No hidden rooms. No intruders. No explanation. But the voices continued. especially late at night. Several guards refused underground patrol entirely after hearing them personally. One described dozens of people whispering at once. Another claimed someone called his name directly from beneath the stone floor. By morning, even the bravest men inside Blackthorn avoided the lower halls whenever possible, because fear becomes far more dangerous once experienced directly. The king had stopped attending meals, stopped holding councils, stopped appearing publicly altogether. Most days, he remained alone beside the fire inside his chambers, wrapped in blankets, breathing heavily. The sickness had hollowed him visibly now. Servants entering the room avoided eye contact afterward, because seeing a dying king changes something inside people. It destroys the illusion of permanence. One evening, Father Lucian visited Aldrin again. The king spoke quietly for nearly an hour, about the early years of his reign, about battles, about his wife, about summer. He spoke like a man remembering a different lifetime entirely. Then suddenly he asked, "Do you think God abandoned this castle?" The priest hesitated, not because he lacked faith, because he lacked certainty. And eventually, even silence becomes an answer. Only 3 men attended the final council meeting. Father Lucian, the commander of the guard, and the king. No nobles remained healthy enough to come. The meeting lasted less than 20 minutes. There were no strategies left to discuss, no food left to redistribute, no hope of rescue anymore. The commander suggested abandoning sections of the castle entirely to preserve heat. The priest suggested prayer. The king simply stared into the fire. Then quietly, he gave the final royal order of his life. Open the gates at dawn. The room fell silent immediately. The commander believed he had misunderstood. Opening the gates meant surrendering the castle to winter itself, to death, to whatever waited outside beneath the endless snow. But the king repeated the order again, calmly, almost peacefully, because deep down, Aldrin understood something everyone else still feared admitting. Blackthorn had already fallen long ago. The people inside simply had not stopped breathing yet. At dawn, the gates opened. Slowly, painfully. Ice cracked from the hinges as ancient wood moved against frozen stone. No army waited outside. No survivors. Only endless white silence. Snow drifted through the entrance immediately. Cold air flooded the lower halls. The remaining guards stood watching the open world beyond the walls. No one stepped outside at first, because after months trapped inside Blackthorn, the outside no longer felt real. It looked empty enough to swallow entire kingdoms. One guard eventually walked several steps beyond the gates, then stopped. Far away within the snowfall, dark shapes stood motionless across the valley. Human shapes. Watching. The guard retreated immediately, and before anyone could speak, the storm returned once again. Violent. Sudden. As if winter itself had been waiting for the gates to open. King Aldrin asked to remain alone that evening. No guards. No priest. No servants. Only firelight beside the throne. The remaining survivors obeyed quietly, because dying rulers are granted strange forms of respect. Late during the night, some guards claimed they heard the king speaking to someone inside the hall. But no second voice answered. Only Aldrin himself, softly, calmly, like a man speaking to ghosts, or memories, or perhaps both. No one interrupted him. And by dawn, the throne room stood silent once more. The king had vanished. His blanket remained beside the cold fireplace. The throne stood empty beneath darkness, and the massive hall carried only silence. Searches began immediately despite exhaustion. Guards checked every corridor, every chamber, every staircase. Nothing. Then finally, tracks were discovered leading toward the open gates. One set only. The king had walked into the storm alone during the night. Weak, dying, disappearing into endless snow without witnesses. Father Lucian stared at the tracks for a long time before quietly whispering a prayer. Not for the king, for Blackthorn itself. Because now, the castle truly belonged to death. They found him shortly before sunset, half buried beneath snow beyond the valley road. King Aldrin rested against a frozen tree overlooking Blackthorn Castle in the distance. His eyes remained open, facing the castle one final time. Snow covered his shoulders like pale ash. The guards carried him back silently. No ceremony followed. No bells rang. The throne room was too cold now even for mourning, so the king remained wrapped in cloth beside the chapel while the storm raged outside. And during that night, several people swore they heard footsteps crossing the great hall again. Slow, measured, royal. The final fires died 3 nights later. Without wood, the castle surrendered fully to cold. Rooms froze solid. Water turned to ice. Breath crystallized in darkness. The remaining survivors gathered inside the chapel together beneath blankets and candlelight. No one spoke much anymore. There was no energy left for conversation. Only waiting remained. Waiting for sleep, for death, for silence. One by one, the candles burned out through the night, and eventually, Blackthorn Castle disappeared completely into darkness. The storm outside buried the walls slowly beneath snow. Tower after tower vanished into white emptiness. And by morning, the great fortress looked less like a castle, and more like a tomb. Years later, travelers crossing the northern valleys still spoke about Blackthorn Castle. Most avoided the ruins entirely. Some claimed lights moved behind frozen windows at night. Others swore they heard bells ringing during storms despite the tower having collapsed long ago. A few even claimed the gates sometimes stood open after heavy snowfall, as if someone still waited inside. But no one stayed long enough to discover the truth. Because Blackthorn no longer felt abandoned. It felt occupied by memory itself. And memory can haunt places more deeply than ghosts ever could. The castle remained there through every winter afterward, silent beneath endless snow. Its halls frozen forever in the final days of a dying kingdom. And somewhere deep within those buried corridors, beyond the ice, beyond the darkness, the last candles of Blackthorn still burned quietly alone.